Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I've got another video for you here today in the Failing Towards Success series, where I talk about how practice makes progress, and you can watch me do the process of painting Kaladin Stormblessed from the Stormlight Archives series by Brandon Sanderson. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll check in with you later. Thank you for joining me on my channel today. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how practice makes progress as you watch the process of this video. Before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to my patrons on my Patreon page who are an encouragement and a constant source of just wonderful engagement for me. I really appreciate you all, and I'm very grateful for you being a part of my journey. So here we go. I wanted to talk today about how practice makes progress and a little bit about the idea of the pursuit of perfection. I think artists and lay people often misconstrue the artist's journey to be one of a search for perfection. Artists are often drawn to the aesthetic in a pure and beautiful form, which leads us to a pursuit of absolute beauty or unequaled beauty. I believe that this drives many creatives, but it's actually a falsehood. The pursuit of visual perfection is fleeting. It's outside of the realms of human experience. Instead of searching for perfection in our work, we should endeavor to understand that joy and beauty lie within the practice that we engage in, not the finished product. I think this is an ironic truth that most of us instinctually understand to be true. But even so, it doesn't stop us from struggling to attain a perfect aesthetic. Albert Einstein suggested that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So from the outside looking in, it may look to many people that creatives are insane because we constantly engage in the same practice over and over again, hoping to find different results. Oftentimes using the exact same medium and same processes. But if you've ever created something, I think like a series of portraits, for example, or let's say you're doing a series of portraits of contemporary young people on wood canvas, for example, and you're using acrylic paints. So you've got this setup of sort of medium and subject matter that are consistent. You use photographs as your subject for the pieces, and you start with one painting. You finish it, and it goes generally well. You choose a second subject, you start that painting, and as you go through that second painting, you're sort of evaluating the process of creating that painting based on your experience of doing the previous piece. Now, you evaluate that you're making progress as you work. So you're starting to see some improvement in your work. Maybe it's a little more accurate to what you want it to look like. Your colors are looking better. The form looks better. Your work is more fluid. It's easier. And you finish it and you start another piece, on and on and on. Anyways, eventually you reach a plateau, a homogenization of a degree of perfection. The curve of pleasure and completeness of work goes from an upward angle slowly to a more level angle. Your growth in skill is leveling off. This doesn't mean that you've gotten closer to the producing perfect work. In fact, when you reach that plateau, typically what I've experienced is that the opposite is true. You now realize the degree to which you must grow. You are more aware of what you don't know. And there's no such thing as perfect in art. And you just sort of become aware of this. You're conscious of where you're at on the journey. So then you just realize, I'm never going to reach that perfect goal. My work's never going to reach perfection. So then the question for me is, what are we pursuing? Perfection's an unachievable goal. So why do we continue to practice? What in the human psyche manifests to keep us going forward and working? This is something I've been thinking about. I was recently sitting and drawing with my son. He was working on a drawing, and he picked it up and showed me, and it looked good. He's genuinely getting better at drawing, and he's been kind of pursuing growing in that over the past year and a half or so. And he's been drawing mostly from other people's pieces, which is totally a valid way of learning in early stages of becoming an artist, looking at other artists' work that you really like and trying to emulate it. That's perfect and awesome. It's a great way to approach learning. And it also makes it easy to evaluate where you're at on a technical skill level. If you're able to sort of create something that's similar, you can sort of guess that there's some growth in your capacities. It's easy to look at his work and determine how he accurately can see, how accurate his seeing is, right? So if I'm looking at the piece that he's drawing from and I'm seeing what he's drawing, I can sort of say, okay, well, this part's off or that part's close, whatever. He's even starting to be able to self-edit. He pointed at his drawing and he said, this part isn't quite right. I think it was in relation to some of the proportions or something. They weren't quite right. They were a little bit off. It's wonderful to see him growing, and he proudly held the piece up to me and he said, look, and I praised him for his efforts, and I told him that I can see him improving. He said to me, it's like you say, Dad, practice makes perfect. My heart kind of sank a little bit when he said that, because I never have really pushed my kids towards perfection. I've never tried to outwardly do that anyways. I want my kids to know that I don't expect them to be perfect in the arena of life, whether it's art or everything else, with school or anything like that. I always tell them just to give 100% effort. And their marks at school are irrelevant to me. If they're giving effort, I believe they'll be okay. In regards to art, I say that practice makes progress, not practice makes perfect. Practice makes progress. As a young man, probably if I'm honest, still I struggle with this. I struggled with perfectionistic tendencies, the kind that made me believe that if I couldn't do something perfect, there was absolutely no reason to do it at all. So I spent large chunks of time as a creative young person not producing anything. I was just afraid to start because I knew that I couldn't achieve what I saw in my head. And this makes me really sad. I believed that lie. It stifled me. The pursuit of perfection in an artistic endeavor is just totally a lie. Art is subjective. So even if I don't like what I'm creating, it's possible that beauty lies within it. Someone else might see something beautiful in what I created. Even if I felt it wasn't perfect, irrespective of that, the act of creating, just the act of doing it, carries with it some inherent value that is missed out on by not doing the act. So for example, if I was to create a portrait, I'm the recipient of the following inherent values. Number 1, the act of creating the portrait of a human's face causes the firing of neurons in my brain as I struggle to evaluate and understand the composition, structure, and shape of the face. So just by the act of doing the artwork, my brain is firing, my neurons are working, and I'm growing. There's things going on inside my brain that are healthy and good. Number 2, my brain works to interpret a model onto 2D space from a 2D photo or a 3D construct in my brain and back onto a 2D plane. So when you're looking at drawing something, whether you're doing a still life or if I'm looking at somebody else's drawing and then I'm sort of trying to draw that on paper from observation, there's this amazing thing that your brain is doing that's trying to basically reconstruct this thing in a 2D space and have it believable in a 3D sense, which is just it's quite an amazing feat that our brains can do. It's almost like, I kind of liken it sort of to being a translator in some ways, where I think your brain is communicating back what it's seeing in a practical sense. It's really cool. Number 3, your hand-eye coordination is growing. So as you're working on a piece, the ability to draw it on paper, your brain and your hand and the connection between those is growing and developing. So beyond those sort of physical, those are more, I would say, physical things going on inside your body. There's more what would you call it? Emotional or psychological benefits, maybe? I don't know. So the 4th thing, I think, is that I'm applying myself to the discipline of growing a skill. There's an interpersonal growth that can happen as I'm looking at a person's face and trying to render it. So the act of developing a skill is something that I think a lot of us don't do as much of these days. And maybe it's because of social media and phones and things like that. We just get distracted and pulled into sort of this cycle of not kind of doing something that challenges us, but rather just sort of vegging out and going into sort of a zombie state. So our downtime is sometimes spent and could be better spent in better ways, like doing art or music or something like that. As I practice my art, I'm trying to understand, like if I'm looking at a person's face and I'm trying to draw them on paper, I'm trying to understand what they're feeling or thinking, or what the underlying tensions are in their face, the nuances of their expression, and then I'm trying to translate that onto my paper so that a viewer of my work can sense those emotions or those ideas that are coming out of the person's face that I'm looking at. I think that this is like a practical exercise in developing empathy. I think artists, every time we do a piece, we're growing an empathetic backbone. We're starting to grow in our empathy as we look at people and try to render them. The truth is that I have a limited innate level of capacity to create a portrait. At a certain point in my life, I will hit that ceiling, or perhaps as age takes me over, which, it's starting to, being 42, there's things that I just can't do as well as I used to. And maybe that will be the same with my art at a certain point. Maybe my capacity will diminish with age. I don't know. My hope is that I continue to grow in my skill level throughout my life. And I hope that that's what we all are striving towards, is sort of a growth in our skill. None of that really matters, though. The future is something that we can't determine. I can't sit here and be like, well, when I'm 80, I'm going to be doing blah, blah, blah. I can't say that this is exactly what's going to happen in my life. I don't have control over that. Instead, I need to thank God for each and every day an opportunity to challenge myself to grow. And then just apply myself to the practice of growing in my craft. So I want to encourage you guys today. If you have been feeling stifled by, the imperfection of your work, if you look at other people's work and you wonder, why am I even trying? Their work is so much better than mine. I just want to say, stop. Don't compare yourself to other people. Don't imagine that you're somehow going to reach perfection in your work. Instead, just enjoy the process. Take stock of the value of what you're getting out of the practice of your work, and just continue to do it and work hard. And I believe that in that you will find more joy and more fulfillment as you go through the creative process. And as always, these are words for myself too. I need to hear this just as much as every other artist and creative, so don't pretend like, I'm not trying to pretend like I've got it all together. It's a journey, and this is why we're all here together on this journey. So I want to encourage you guys, keep grinding, keep working hard, keep practicing your craft, and you will see progress, and it'll feel great. So until next time, be good to each other. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more content, please click one of the videos on the screen. If you'd like to be notified when all my videos go up, please click the bell icon. And if you'd like to follow me on social medias, you can find me on patreon.com/Corey Lansdell. I'm at Corey Lansdell on Twitter and Instagram, and you can find me on Facebook as well. Until next time, you guys, be good to each other.